And Kate, good to see you.
Good to see
Thought
you.
Maybe you were gonna run a little late today. But
I
you're actually early.
work let me get out of there, so I was able to dash over.
All right.
Yeah.
Art, may not be with us tonight. He was having, some family, come and, he just wasn't sure if they were gonna be able to get everything in, so. Anyways, he felt that, you know, he just wasn't sure. Okay.
Well,
Heard from anybody else?
I've heard from no one. I might, but I'm gonna try not to, but Doug just got off the river. And I haven't talked to him in 10 days, so I'd like to find out how they're doing. So they had some weather. They had to stay on, they were beached for a full day. So they had to do 20 miles today on the river. And I guess there's still weather down there.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot, 20 miles.
Well, the whole trip is 57, but they didn't expect that the last 2 days they couldn't divide it in half, so.
He's doing the Grand Canyon.
He already did that. He's doing a San Juan from, I think it's Mexican Hat down to wherever the end of that particular journey is, so 57 miles down. Yeah, him and just another guy. So I'd like to make sure that they're okay.
He's been gone for 10 days. You haven't talked to him for 10 days?
No, all they do is send me by satellite a text that they got someplace
Oh,
safely.
okay.
Yeah, and then I can see on the river where they are.
That's good.
I can't see them, but I can see that where they are.
Sure.
How's it
You're
going?
you're first up, so you can. You can just stay up there if you like, sir.
Wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Too bad.
I can probably get you going shortly.
Perfect.
Cameron's in the waiting room. And I invited her in as a panelist.
Great.
So Cameron, if you want to come in, if you accept that panelist invite, you can participate.
All right. Unfortunately. There's some ice on the wall.
This is an updated concept drawing that just
Patty said she had
completed on
branches
Friday,
in
so
there
it missed the
this
packet. Oh, yeah, similar to what you have in your
Yeah,
packet.
it looks,
Oh, so now we got a trail overlook. That's nice.
A little bit more of the Started to snow up there.
Hey.
how long is that little trail?
Fairly short. It's like
Just
quarter
like a
mile or
little,
less.
yeah,
It's
it's just,
I signed up for those traffic. notices.
just your kids screaming, you take them up in the mountains. You went straight up to, yeah.
Notifications for those, they come in like half a dozen every day.
A bike trail or a walking trail or?
No.
It'd be a walking trail because there's some stair segments of it. It would not be an accessible
It's pretty
trail.
It's pretty steep.
Yeah. We wanted to work towards a bike trail. It just wouldn't work, yeah, the grades, et cetera.
Like a little kid's bike trail, it's kind of cool, but
Like a pump track is what I
like
heard.
for younger kids, is
Yeah, not something like behind us where it's like 4 miles.
Short.
of- Yeah.
so it could be like
Last night, I'm like, why are we using codes?
up to 12 years old or something like that.
I thought we were all using go to plain speed.
Yeah, we were trying to fit in a couple other things on the site too. So I think we did a pretty good job of getting a lot of diversity,
Because state patrols.
but not,
the
yeah,
codes.
not quite everything we dreamed of.
After 9/11, we were all supposed to fight.
There's John.
My gosh, I had the same question.
How's it going?
Good, how are you guys?
Good.
Okay. Come on, how are you?
Right.
It's okay.
I figured it was some thing that doesn't really matter.
Got cold.
So it looks like the stage is coming down.
Real quick.
It would be moved,
Right.
not coming down.
Okay,
Yep, because we do know that that is, that's something that was built by the community.
where's it going?
I thought,
Appreciate it.
I thought that this was a good idea with it here.
We're not seeing it?
See, it's
Yeah, there it is.
facing the ball fields, you get a bigger area.
Gotcha,
Spread out.
yeah.
They have a smaller
Hey.
gathering area there.
Good, how are you? Good to see, yeah, that little, you mean like the flex space?
Yeah. That's big enough for a small soccer field. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves.
It's okay, sorry.
We're formal neighbors.
Well, it's 5:33, and I would like to welcome everybody to the October 24th, 2022 work session here in Idaho Springs. And I would like to add one thing to the agenda for the work session at the end, if you would pencil in Columbine Garden Club. And we're going to kick it off with the Sports and Recreation Complex Master Plan update.
Sorry. Thank you. Before you this evening, I've distributed a new document. You had a similar document in the packets that give you a little bit of reference, but we have done a little bit of fine tuning with our consultants THK and the CCMRD as well. So what's before you is a master planning project that we've embarked on that we're about to get more into the public realm, but wanted to talk with council about first. So currently, as I'm sure you are all aware, there's 2 ball fields at this location. But we're looking to try to add some diversity to the amenities at this location and to the different play surfaces. So what's being proposed here and envisioned is a skate park about 15,000 square feet. And that skate park is proposed to be further to the north, closer to I-70, fairly visible, also have really good sun exposure for the site. And then behind it would be a flex space, the potential for maybe some small soccer, youth soccer to take place there, but also if you did have several concerts at the same time, this would provide you with the potential for a collapsible stage to be located in the cul-de-sac that would face this flex space. The original stage that is currently on the property is proposed to be relocated closer to the baseball field. The one baseball field that would remain, and that way you would have more space in this layout for larger concerts rather than the flex space, which would be a pretty relatively small in comparison. There's also a playground envisioned on the site next to the flex space, half-court basketball, concession stands and bathrooms that would be able to be accessed by a motor vehicle through this seam patio area. You would be able to service that. And then the tennis/pickleball courts. I know we've been working on trying to get about 4 pickleball courts there. That was our goal. And 1 tennis court. Of course, they wouldn't be able to be played simultaneously. It'd have to be one or the other. Yeah, balls flying everywhere. And then the parking area on the east side of the site is envisioned to be expanded and kind of formalized, get a number of spaces there. We've also talked with the Forest Preserve and seeing if we could potentially relocate their entrance, which currently comes into the east of the site. There's still some due diligence that needs to occur there, and the Forest Preserve needs to talk with their staff further, but we're hoping to relocate that more towards the East Idaho Springs Road in between some of their buildings. There are some low utility lines, though, that might have to be looked at. With that, the concessions and bathrooms would be kind of a vault system there because we do not have a lot of because we do not have a lot of utilities in this area. We do have a water line, but that's about it, and it's a small water line, 2-inch. So currently, we're proposing just use a vault system, just because bringing sewer across the highway or up East Idaho would be pretty costly.
Will we just concession that out? Like a service, you guys wouldn't be doing it, what I'm saying.
I believe that'd be the case. I don't think the Public Works has got a facility that would, a truck that would do that work, so yeah. With that, I guess, there's also a small hiking trail that would head up to an overlook. With that, I guess I'd ask if Cameron either has any comments or if there are any questions.
Hi, everybody. Jared, I think you did a great job. I don't have anything else to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions or be a part of discussion. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. We are looking at grant opportunities for additional funding for some of the elements of this. It might have to be phased over time. We're still analyzing those items.
And I know Cameron had suggested that the skate park be moved further north, so it's not shaded as much by the mountain. That, I think that was a good call, and it's depicted on the map here. I am curious about this like roundabout for the portable stage. It just seems to use quite a bit of land, you know, just to park the stage and have access to the shed. I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe, you know, the storage shed maybe could be moved to the east. Now, where they're depicting a tree here. Just so, because that cul-de-sac's kind of eating up a good amount of land. I mean, we could, if you utilize that land, we could get a full basketball court instead of a half, you know, if we weren't, or a larger greenway area, or anyways, that's my 2 cents.
I think that's good thinking, Chuck.
Might be something where you could do, still allow for a paved section, but then you would just literally have to back the stage in rather than being able to turn around within that.
Well, I'm
location.
thinking maybe that portable stage, we're just using it for storage, right? The stage,
That would be if there was an event where there were 2 bands at the same time, maybe a larger concert event that we could utilize.
I got you, facing the green space.
It's not our intention, to my knowledge, to keep the stage there in a
Okay.
collapsed state. I think
Yeah.
that's only for events.
And I do have a question about the ice rink. I think we were thinking of trying to find a spot. Is there not enough room here, or was there an alternative?
We did we did have a few alternatives. We didn't show them because these are our preferred and it seemed to function a little better.
Gotcha.
That did have that ice rink within it. You know, maybe that's something that could move closer to where the cul-de-sac is and potentially still be utilized as long as we allow for enough space to still back that stage in. You could ask about that.
I think Cameron might have something to say on this.
So the beauty of the rink is that it can be set up and broken down pretty easily. But we also are considering selling the rink and using the proceeds to help fund this project. And so I don't think that it would be a smart idea to make it a big design decision to accommodate the rink.
It could go on the field, it could go on the tennis court.
And it could go in the tennis court. It could also go in the parking lot. So I think we've got some good options.
I got a few questions. So, I like the design. I like that we're getting a lot of use out of that area for a lot of different things. What's the thinking behind the fire pit? How will that be used? I mean, is that a wintertime thing, or?
The fire pit would have to be used within accordance with any fire bans, of course, but the thought there is that, you know, we're activating the space to appeal to so many different user groups that maybe that would be a nice amenity to, you know, really bring people together, thinking about like family reunions, for example, and other types of gatherings that might be nice and complemented by a fire.
Ken, would it be gas?
I don't think we've discussed that level of detail with THK, but I think that that is what they have up at the Winter Park Rendezvous Event Center is with gas.
We did learn,
That's a
the
nice-
Forest Service came to our progress meeting today, earlier today with staff. And the Forest Service representative said they do have natural gas at their Forest Service facility.
So we could run a
Just
line.
tap
from there.
I mean, that makes the most sense over there where it's so heavily treed right above it.
And who maintains that though? Like who turns it on and off? Like,
The direct center, I imagine. Tam, are you able to rent out any of your property? Like if somebody wanted to have a private, you can. So this would actually, I mean, the fire pit, not alone, but all these other options. The flex field would allow for all that kind of stuff. So maybe more opportunities.
That's funny, I had that same
Did
question,
you?
yeah.
Great minds.
I'm thinking they can't rent it out, but they can ask for a donation, maybe, I don't know. But she said family reunions and I thought. of that
Right, well, it's too
immediately.
loud for a wedding, but I mean, all the
Yeah.
other options are pretty good. Although I got married on I-70.
is there,
I have no idea what I promised.
poor guy. Poor guy.
Do not feel bad for that man.
Yeah.
We rent out to the Clear Creek Dems every year. You know, that's an example of a non-music type event that happens. And I think that we would have potential for increasing that aspect of our operation.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So another one of my questions is, do we do a study on the two ball fields and determine how much they're used? Is it ever where both ball fields are being used at the same time or currently? Seems like ball fields have dropped off quite a bit, but
Did Chuck answer that?
Well, I was saying, I coached for 5 years
Right.
and, we just like ceased to have children. I mean, when I coached, there were a lot more kids and we never needed more than one ball field. And that second one, if memory serves me correct, it's only like 226 feet.
To the.
So
yeah,
it's
to the end,
woefully,
yeah.
Woefully small.
and I think it was 30 years ago, maybe they were using them both, but it just kept dropping off. dropping off.
Honestly, yeah, in fact, it was a co-ed team and I would often have to, we would play Gilpin. I would borrow one of their players and stick them out in
for
left
us.
field, or they would borrow one of ours. We were both so short on kids, we
Right.
barely outfit a team.
What's this one now? Chuck?
Well, the big one is, I think it might be like 306 or something like that. It's, the big one is really a decent, little league field.
Sure.
The other one also was kind of clocked, if you will, weird. I mean, if somebody really laid into one, it'd be out in I-70.
70, yeah.
So, right. This is much better utilization and it restores some amenities that were lost,
Agreed.
like the tennis courts and half basketball court. Just really a nice solution.
Mhm.
Another thing I was wondering about, it doesn't show a concession stand, it shows a food truck access maybe. So there really isn't a need for a concession stand. It's felt like there's not a need for that. or-
Well, we've indicated the concession / bathroom, so that's still it's pretty conceptual. But the idea was also that if you wanted to have more of a food truck fair or something, that interior seam road would be
Yeah.
stable enough, sturdy enough that you could bring in a few and have that as a part of an event.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And then it was mentioned about the removal of snow for the skate park. I don't think currently we have a need to remove snow over there in the winter time. I just wondered if we know what that snow is like on the south side there, closer to the trees and removing it from the parking area. I mean, is that an issue in the winter time at times? Who's gonna be doing
What's
that?
your thought there, Mr. Bordoni?
Well, I mean, like you say, we haven't removed snow. We plowed that bicycle path and that's about it.
And the skate park, is there one up in Winter Park? I know there's one in Fairplay that's out, in a high mountain area. Do they have drains, right, where the snow melts and it goes down the drain? Do any of them have like where you can turn on a heating unit so that they can kind of self melt?
I'm not familiar with the heating, but I have been told by lots of members of the skateboard that it's pretty standard with that the skateboarders actually would shovel the skate park themselves. And then having it in the southern, better sun exposure will help for sure. But in the back area against the trees, it does get
Right.
snowy for sure, and that ultimately turns to ice. And so that's one of the really nice advantages to this design, is that the amenities that would be utilized in the winter months would be hit by the sun. And that would help a lot, but definitely drainage would need to be
I just-
implemented.
I'm just curious, because like the library has that radiant sidewalk, you know, so it melts that area and it does it pretty good in a shaded area. I know it's a lot of money though.
Yeah,
It's a-
that'd be
it's a
great.
big wish.
It's a big wish for that. So.
If they let it turn ice, it could be like a ice
They could
skate.
They could- It's snow, whatever, get the smaller, yeah.
Or,
I-
and
Sounds
then
like a lot of broken limbs.
what's the proposed surface of the parking area? Are we proposing to blacktop that whole area or?
We haven't, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the intent. That would be the intent, is to block.
All right, any more questions?
the fire authority look at this?
We've not shared it with fire authority yet.
Is this something we can show the public or? It's
It's a
still
public meeting.
conceptual.
Yes, no, yes, it can be shared.
Okay,
In fact, we would like that. And there is a survey out on this project that was initiated by the CCMRD. So to try to get some public input. So we're gonna try to push that out as well. That information we get from the survey about this project will go into our grant applications. So, but yes, please share it. We want to get, we want it, and part of the project with THK, with our consultant, is to do some public meetings as well, and some public outreach. So we're gonna be doing that.
We want to share it with council first.
yeah, well, I just didn't know it was too conceptual to
Nope.
move on.
We've been through a couple iterations, and we, as a group, as a team, feel this is a pretty good idea of what we'd like to do here. We want to make sure council is good with it. And then also the Metropolitan District Board will be reviewing it as well. I think next week, Cameron,
No, on Wednesday.
this coming Wednesday. So
Sorry, I have one more too. I know I'm loaded with questions.
it's good. for sport.
I think that's a great idea, moving the Forest Service access, but do they currently have easement through that property right now, or?
That's a good question. We're not certain if they have an easement or not. They certainly have been accessing. And we also did, it's really challenging to see, but there's a roll-up or there's a door on the western building. So we did preserve access to that western building. They did mention that sometimes they have a trailer that is attached that they roll in there. So we're going to look at the turning movements for that.
That's, sorry, Jared, to interrupt. That's off 314 going in right here. And
That's the building that they have the door here, so we did preserve a space there. Their main point of access is here.
with a big gate, yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to work with them to see if they can shift it here. They might have some constraints with utility lines up above, but they're going to look into that on their end too. We just spoke with them earlier today.
They've also got the egress out of on the far east end yet. Where,
Is
I
there?
think
Yeah.
they do, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, they do have another,
right.
yep, access point.
That might be a possibility as well, to see if they truly
Swap.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Sorry, one more. That stage where it's turning onto that ball field, you're gonna have a fence between the stage and the grass ball field. Is that something you remove during the concerts, or
Not
is
that
that
I'm
stage is
aware
just
of.
gonna be there in the,
Great,
it might be a
great
line of,
consideration there.
might
Yeah, like
be-
one of
It can be removed.
line of sight.
You could have one of those rolling fences.
You know,
That's what we have right now, and it works really well. And I wonder if we could almost even just repurpose what we currently use.
Yeah,
might be able to hug that stage a little bit closer to, right now it's kind of all that squared off area, but yeah, we might be able to look at that.
But if you've got a tall chain link though, it's gonna probably block some of that. It'll be a little awkward. It'll block some of that stage at the lower level, and that's what we're thinking.
Right.
Yeah, but if it could be rolled back, you just.
Sure.
One other thing we might like to hear, if you have any thoughts on, council, is staging, because we are phasing. We know we're not gonna be able to build this whole complex. We're trying to do the master plan right now. We're rushing to get a grant application in to GOCO. And we're working hard on that. And our thinking is that the first phase would likely include the skate park, maybe the tennis pickleball court, kind of the front side of the project, and maybe all or part of the parking lot, depending upon if we get a grant and how much money is available to be contributed by the city and by CCMRD. Any thoughts on what council sees as priorities for phasing this project, assuming we do have to phase it?
I think yours is good. Cam, you think you're gonna have rapid grass next year?
I think so, yeah.
So if we could get the stage moved to the new location, that would probably be like something higher up there too. But I
That
think
would help, but that's not the only option. Sam and I were actually talking about it earlier today, that if we could not move the stage in phase one, that we could potentially talk about using that collapsible stage and have that over on Quinn and have rapid grass.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Although it's a very pretty stage,
How many phases are you talking?
Well, I think
whatever it takes.
that depends if we are fortunate to get a COCO grant and
We're gonna put
I would say
parking
maybe
spots
several
today.
is my thought.
Yeah,
I
three.
think I could see likely 3 phases might be seem almost natural.
Will you be able to obtain bids for like 3 phases right now to see how much you can afford at the time being?
Part of what THK is doing is some cost estimates for us, some high level cost estimates. So we will have some idea when we go into going after grants, we'll have some idea of what we're going after, although that's challenging in this current environment with costs. So one other thing I want to let council know is that unfortunately the 2-inch water line that services the ball fields and the Forest Service that crosses the highway goes right through the future area where the tennis court, pickleball court, and skate park is proposed. So we would need to relocate that water line probably along the roadway there. The greenway,
sidewalk, you think?
roadway, yeah, on the north side there is most likely. So I just we wouldn't want to keep that there because if it breaks, then we're digging up the skate park or the
No.
tennis court. So, and it's better in the road for public work access.
Sure.
anyhow. So,
I think you're right on the staging though, because that's the 2 most desirable things right now.
I think so.
Is that tennis court and that skate park.
I'd say it would be a big win for council, especially past councils if the skate park went in. And I know
Yeah.
people are feeling this
Oh,
strongly about pickleball these days as well, but the skate park I think would be a big win for you guys.
All right, anything further on the sports and recreation complex? Then I'd like to move to the Roberts Brothers building update.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor. So before you this evening is a memo regarding the 3 potential locations options for the Roberts Brothers building. The city has been working with the property owner as well with the design team on the potential for relocating the front half of the Roberts Brothers building. So the original portion of that building, which is about 22 feet by 45 feet. There's the 3 options are option number 1, just across 15 from its existing location. Some pros and cons that it's not far moved is a nice thing, even though once you get up and elevated, the cost decreases. It's not exponential when it moves a little further. It would not require a lot of change to the existing parking lots. However, we would probably look to push it back a little bit off the corner because when the parking garage goes in, that gives us an even tighter S maneuver there to get into the parking lot between 15th and 16th. So that's something that we've already talked about, maybe shaving back that sidewalk, et cetera, to allow for a little easier turning maneuver. And this would definitely conflict with that. The second option would be mid-block between 15 and 16, so kind of behind the Vintage Moose. This is probably one of the simpler simpler locations to implement because we do have the space. It would not conflict with our existing parking area or drive aisles. Yes, we'd lose a few spaces like we would the last one, but the drive aisles would remain intact as they are today. The one drawback is that it is mid-block, so you might lose a little bit of that urban road, abutting a roadway environment, but we do feel that there would still be a lot of visibility because you'd still have a great visibility off of 70. And then once you're in the parking lot, of course, you would see it and be able to access any user that was in there. And then last, is option number 3 is across from the Vintage Moose, across 16th. Then a couple of nice things about this is it blocks the back of the CenturyLink building, which is not as utilized as some other buildings. It does give that kind of urban frontage look where you've got 2 buildings that are across the street from one another. The drawbacks to it are we would have to completely reorient the parking area, which we can do and have already kind of looked at with the downtown master plan. It might have to go down to a one-way configuration, kind of a loop in that area. We haven't finalized design of that. The other drawback, and I think the more important one to consider, is by putting it in this location, it would conflict with the garbage facility that Westbound and Down has, as well as their loading area. The garbage facility, I'm not as worried about because we've always talked about building a garbage enclosure for that whole block, kind of like the other block has behind Bojo's. But the loading area might be a little bit more of a challenge. I have spoken with Westbound and Down. They weren't completely against it. They were interested in working with us. We haven't brought back anything very concrete. I just showed the gentleman, the new manager, where basically that corner would be and how we would have to work to shifting that, their delivery area. So those are kind of pros and cons there. A couple images. I did include a couple images from the downtown master plan that do kind of talk about reorienting the parking area in the rear of both of those blocks, but predominantly between 16 and 17. And then my kind of terrible image, but I think it's somewhat effective, where my wheel is basically where the corner of the building would potentially be approximately. So you can kind of see where it is in comparison with, the dumpster enclosure, et cetera. We also did speak with the building owner, and the building owner, his preference was option 3. But we do know that there are some challenges to that, and that's what we wanted to bring before council this evening, is to talk about what we think would be a preferred location. Once we do get a preferred location, then we can turn the surveyors and engineers loose and with a better direction, and get a solid plan set that would be bid out here, as soon as we can, in the hopes of relocating it as soon as we can also.
Just from walking it, option 3, I think looks the best. It looks like it belongs. I think it helps being across the street from the Vintage Moose. It looks like it was part of the plan. Option 2 doesn't look too bad either. And we do have the owner in the, option 1, and we do have the owner of option, what would be blocking some of option 1's view at that out of that patio. And of course, we need your input on that.
I like option 3 because of the view from the buildings to the water wheel, and
Yeah, and option 3, I mean, I don't mean to be uncharitable, but that switching center isn't the best looking building.
it sounds like there's some challenges to option 3 with the routing of traffic and parking and trash and all that, but I like option 3 because of the not blocking someone.
Yeah.
Current property zones. You put a building behind somebody's property,
Yeah.
it's gonna devalue their property. a little
I
bit,
wouldn't
isn't it?
be thrilled about being blocked myself.
No,
Was this a planning commission discussion?
No. this
No?
is not the planning commission.
It doesn't need to go to them?
No, it doesn't truly need to go to planning commission. We would potentially take it to them once we get a little further down the line and some plans.
Okay.
But since it's city property that we're looking
Right,
at
right.
transferring to, et cetera. Now, there might be some plating though that would go to the planning commission.
And I was just curious what their opinion was. We don't, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think at the very least, we want to take it to them as an informational item.
Sure,
As we've done
absolutely.
with some other
'Cause- yeah.
things that aren't
And-
required, but just to make them.
Right, aware. And I wasn't asking for any reason other than the fact that I'd like to know what their opinion would be on what's gonna, and HPRC doesn't have to be involved.
We would include HPRC at more as a high level, but this building is actually not designated
In
in
this
historic. We do want to get their opinion as well as planning commission. So we would talk with them about it, but no, it doesn't technically
Okay.
have to.
So my opinion is, and I get where you're coming from, I'm honestly, because it's such a small town, it's really hard that you're not gonna affect somebody that you could throw a stone at, if that's what it's like. But I think that, I always go with the least amount of cons. I mean, that's why the whole pro-con list is established in the first place. So I would lean towards 2 without actually having walked the property. And I'm not sure what part of it's gonna block yours, but it's gonna block one of your properties, no matter kind of where it's gonna be.
one blocks my property, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And two
It
doesn't
blocks
block.
your,
Doesn't
Well,
block as much.
it
I don't think it
goes
blocks.
the length of your patio, or the width of your patio, I should say.
Two,
One.
yeah, one,
Yeah,
but two, I mean, that's Chip has the current building owner patio looking at the water wheel. Might
Right.
get
that's
blocked.
number 1, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be a drive.
number 2, it's gonna block more like the Tom Meeker's shop, I believe.
Right. Yeah,
And maybe part of
It-
Jack Bojo's a little bit.
I would hate to lose patio space because of it, but it looks like 2 is not really doing that. If that's, and I get what you're saying. It looks more inclusive in number 3.
yeah, it does.
You
It looks
know-
like it was part of the town.
Yeah, like it was meant to be there.
Yeah.
We're like a puzzle piece in Idaho Springs. just
Do we
move a little
happen
things
to
around.
know if he has a different intended use? I mean, they just use it for storage right
And
now.
I will tell you, he's actually seemed pretty flexible. Because this is him talking, that it would be an ideal retail location in 3.
Well, retail would bring us tax money if we're gonna go to all this trouble to move the building.
Right, I don't think
We
it's
want
his
to
intention
generate
to
some
just
sales
continue
tax.
to use it for storage, although he could.
He could,
But since he's the one talking about retail, I mean, I see some flexibility, and I would agree, a mothballed building doesn't really do the city a lot of good.
this
And,
is the city's dime moving it, right?
right.
But it'd be a perfect time to repurpose the
Yeah,
inside of
I
that
agree,
building.
Scott, absolutely.
I mean, it's gonna take some infrastructure to make it into retail.
Right. And Jared, in 3, it's possible to do some reconfiguration of the parking and not lose too many spots. What do you think? Maybe 5 spots or something?
We believe so. The issue is that under the current configuration, you're eating into the drive aisle. And so it would be a substandard drive aisle, which wouldn't be permitted under code. And so if we looked at doing it a one-way configuration all the way through with kind of that curve, and then you could work on angled parking.
Gotcha.
Then I believe with angled parking, one-way configuration would not lose much of those spaces.
Okay, all right, well, that's good.
Now, of course, you lose the few that the building takes up,
Right,
and
right.
then probably a few, unless it narrows or something with the new dumpster.
Yeah, I'm glad you took that picture with your measuring wheel. That's a good visual right there.
It looks like they would still have an aisle for deliveries. Now, maybe not for the dumpster and things like that, but for their products and things like that. Am I right about that there? Just looking where the wheel is, yeah.
Well, the issue there though is that is currently the front door of the building that we
That's
would
true.
move. So I don't know that you'd want to park the vehicle for hours on end in front of that doorway.
Right.
I mean, there will be other doors, so maybe that doesn't become your primary means of ingress and egress because the back is also cut out for a door.
Yeah.
So you could look at it, and it makes sense that you enter from the sidewalk frontage there. So maybe that back doorway becomes decorative in nature. It's more of something there for historic value than for actual usability.
Yeah, and just because I don't know that all members of council have looked inside the Roberts building, but you got that roll-up door in the front. But inside the Roberts Brother building, there also is a large cutout, and I mean large, like 12-foot wide, kind of a doorway, and they're 12-foot wide and probably at least 10 feet high, maybe 12 feet high. That's going to be exposed along with some of the original advertising from like 1880s. That's going to face the vintage moose. So that could be the new front as well.
So I don't want to get off topic on this, but I just want to bring up something or ask something. Our current trash situation in the town, our current deliveries to restaurants, is that something that's currently an issue, or is it okay the way it is, or is that something we should be looking at while we're doing all this parking stuff?
Because we have talked about like community areas for trash, for example.
The circulation for deliveries is certainly a challenge, no doubt about that. And that's not just in this back area. Actually, the back area functions a little better, in my opinion, than other locations. Oftentimes, it's the buildings and restaurants on the north side of town that the truck drivers have a tough time figuring out where best
Well,
to
they park right in the street,
in the street.
and they park there, and they're there until they deliver.
I know.
Usually they do it at hours that, at least my experience, that they'll do it at early hours if they can and not disrupt traffic as little as possible. But also Bojo's, I remember they used to do it right on the front street at an early hour, and they'd have a big truck delivering and probably blocking one lane of traffic while they're doing it. So I know it's a challenge, and I don't know if it's something we could improve on or anything, but.
You know, we would have to take a look at that one-way configuration to see what kind of turning maneuver you would get with a short truck, or it would be one way you'd have to exit and turn around and come back through, one of the two, just out of practicality. Or maybe if you're a delivery truck coming to, the backside of westbound, and westbound's truck is pretty small that comes there. It's, it's only it's like a large U-Haul. It's not a tractor trailer one.
Right.
So if you did bring, Shamrock, oftentimes will bring a tractor trailer that pivots through. Now, if you brought that through, you'd almost have to come to the east to make this work.
Yeah, I like 1 and 3 because it's off the street. And otherwise you're gonna have people going through the parking lot. Maybe more congestion. Sorry.
Jimmy, what do you think?
I like 3. I think that would be most ideal.
All right, any further discussion?
Are we making a decision? Is
Well,
this just to do exploratory right now?
Well, I think that Jared has requested some guidance on which is the preferred. And is it a fair statement for me to say the majority are for number 3?
Sounds like it.
Okay.
I'm just
All right.
wondering if we say the preferred location, he runs into some big roadblock, then he's gonna come back to us.
Well,
Why, you give him a backup? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna say this is not working so good.
well, and I'll tell you, we have tried to hit some of that off. John Bardoni went and walked with us, and actually, the Haynes preferred one that isn't here. And that basically is like across from Anderson Park right here. But as John pointed out, now you run into traffic. Well, you also run into some like water sewer line issues, so that was good enough. So that narrowed it down to these 3.
We've already looked into some of that.
And, yeah, hopefully, we can work something out with westbound and down, where they don't feel put upon. If you look at that wheel, it's just kind of like right on the edge of the property there, so. But I think it actually is gonna make for a better looking, street front.
Are you gonna put in electrical charging stations?
That's a good question because there is one currently on the property. That's something we haven't discussed too much with the property owner. Yeah, that might be something that we'll have to negotiate yet. He might be inclined to not require that 100% because of some of the other electrical charging stations that will be around town, but I don't have a great answer for you yet.
Sure.
Is this move happening in conjunction with the parking garage, or is this something completely separate and happening before?
Scott, if we move it prior to the parking garage, we have a freer hand than doing it in conjunction, just because of the government NEPA process, for example, so it may end up saving a lot of money and a lot of headaches if we move it before. Anything further on the Roberts Brothers? All right, we'll move to community promotion.
Here in council, my staff report is kind of a conglomeration of a couple of things that have been coming together around community promotion over the last couple of years. The first item is some information about some fellowship and internship programs that are available to the city. As you may know, I was what's called a Best and Brightest Graduate Fellow when I came to the city in 2018. That's a program through the Department of Local Affairs, which helps fund graduate students to come and work for the city full-time for 2 years. We've been invited to apply again for this next round, which is 2023, 2025. And so what I wanted to do is just give an idea of what they might work on, which includes things like the potential upcoming comprehensive plan update, this ball fields project that we've been working on, the mobility hub project, and maybe parking management as we move forward into managing that a little bit differently than we do currently. My duties, when I was in the program, I also had day-to-day duties. So there was a lot of things I was doing daily, and then I was kind of functioning in a project management role for a lot of different things that were happening. These interns are typically graduate students or people who are a little bit further along in their careers usually. So maybe a change of career instead of like a fresh out of college student. And they can bring really important capacity to our staff. I think for the most part, we're able to handle the workload that happens at City Hall, but especially in the summertime and as we get into projects, it is great to have another pair of hands. I think this person could potentially help Jared as in an assistant role, or myself or Andy, or even the front desk staff, just to build some additional capacity. And the thing that's really great about most of these people that are in this program is that they want to be in the communities they work in. They want to live here and they want to be a part of the things that are happening. So I really speak very highly of that program. I think if we were able to participate, we'd probably get somebody that is really dedicated to our city. There's another program that's also available to us. It's called the AmeriCorps Vista program. It's slightly different, and it comes out of the AmeriCorps mission to help smaller rural communities build economic sustainability within themselves. As you know, we have a pretty good economy, but this person could potentially meet some needs that we've had in our community for a long time. And this is kind of where this gets to be a little bit meshed into some of the other things we're doing. We have a need in our Chamber of Commerce and some of our other volunteer organizations to build capacity to manage some of the things that we've been doing. One example of this is the marketplace. We've had many of our business owners downtown help to make the marketplace what it is. And that's been working great, but there are some things that happen that we just, even as a staff and as a volunteer base, have had more difficulty managing over time. An example of this is flowers. And selling flowers in June is a heroic undertaking that Public Works goes through. And we kind of have an all hands on deck situation. A lot of our volunteers that have helped with that are still engaged, but it's one of those things where some of them have gotten to the point where they're not able to work as heavily as they have in the past. And we also have more flowers than we've had in the past. So having a person that could be around to help coordinate those activities would be really great. Another example is fireworks. The last couple of years, Chief and Andy and Jared and the mayor and I having you guys have volunteered too for some of that work, but we've gotten together and tried to run an event where Idaho Springs turns into a massive city for a day to watch those fireworks, and it can be a lot to manage. And we could just use a little bit of additional capacity to both integrate with the downtown businesses, make sure stuff is working correctly, and just manage these programs. And so this AmeriCorps Vista program is really well key to that. In my staff report, I talked about how we're a Main Street affiliate program, and Main Street's a program that supports small businesses in the United States. Excuse me. We're an affiliate member because there are some capacity things that would need to be filled to move forward. But if we do move forward, we get access to additional resources. There's grants we can get, a lot of different things we can do as a Main Street community that we can't currently do. And as we move forward with our plans for downtown, this parking structure and all the things we're doing, it might make a lot of sense for us to do that. And so we've had some conversations with the ISMA and the Chamber who have recently joined forces. The Chamber of Commerce is kind of like a mother organization now, and then ISMA is a smaller arm that operates to kind of promote downtown interests. They've combined and they have some additional needs to build capacity within their organization. And they could take on some of these community promotion things that we do as a city that are difficult for us. And so what we've been talking about is, could this person, this Vista, provide additional capacity to the Chamber of Commerce in the summertime especially, and maybe even at the Historical Society to sit at the front desk and answer some of the questions that they get inundated with by visitors. So, you know, in previous years, the Forest Service handled a kind of a help desk at the visitor center, and this person could do some of that too. And so we've been kind of talking about how this might work. The Vista program is also relatively inexpensive. It's about $10,000 for the year, and there's a $2,000 living stipend. I put it in the staff report, but I think that for both of these programs, the best and brightest would be making about $40,000. The Vista would be making about $10,000. We could potentially augment that with the housing stipend if we wanted to, just to make sure that we get people who can live a little bit closer to our community. A lot of communities in the mountains do that now. It's not required, but I just wanted to kind of throw that in there.
Jonathan, I just want to interject that you're not even talking minimum wage. I mean, minimum wage right now is close to 26,000.
Yeah.
And we're talking two positions, that'd be like $52,000.
Typically, the people I've met through this program too are really dedicated professionals. I think the bang for our buck proposition here is relatively high.
Yeah.
That's the reason we missed out last year on a Best and Brightest. The person, her husband worked in Adams County, and they couldn't figure out a housing solution that works, which that's fair. I think that's a pretty far run. But I do think that if we were able to think about where these folks would live while they're working in our community, we might find that we have really good, dedicated employees that build our capacity. The final thing here, I've got two things actually. One is Chamber of Commerce last year asked for a funding request from City Council. Reason being is that they've always been a membership-driven organization, but as times have changed in this country, membership-driven organizations like that are just not as sustainable as they once were. They've asked for funding for some of their budget. I'll tell you, I'm the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce. We have approximately a $5,000 budget. We don't have the money anymore to do things like Dynamite Days or Gold Rush Days or anything like that. We have a lot of people who are really willing to help and be organizing efforts, but a small budget stipend to them from the city could really promote our interests. They are capable of doing a lot of the networking work and all this programming stuff that really helps sales tax be what it is in Idaho Springs. And I think that I wanted to bring forth an idea that we could maybe spend $10,000 to help the Chamber of Commerce build the capacity they need. This goes to the director's salary and maybe building some of these events. The director currently is paid $500 a month for the Chamber of Commerce, and she's expected to work almost half time. So it ends up being a lot of work. And so I think that that could be something that could be useful to us. The final thing that I have in my staff report is this idea about community vitality. I kind of couched it a little bit, but I think that with a lot of the efforts that we're undertaking right now, like this parking management program, and doing these things and really striking this balance between making sure that we have the tools necessary to get the sales tax we need to provide services to residents, and making sure that residents have the quality of life they need to make this the community that everyone knows Idaho Springs is. It might make sense to either have something like a Department of Community Vitality or maybe some policies and things that we do in that direction to promote this balance and equitable and kind of community asset building within our community to make sure that we keep our resilient neighborhoods and we keep the people who make Idaho Springs special and build the resources to have a city of tomorrow with kids and families and the ability to age in place and all of these things. A lot of this work I've been doing for the last several years, a lot of the efforts we've been undertaking for the last several years have gone towards that direction of finding this balance. And I think that these two interns could help us strike that balance, whether or not we create a department or we just start, really thinking about our programs that do that. And I just wanted to throw that in as a kind of final point, because I think all these things kind of tie together. We know we have a really great volunteer community in Idaho Springs, and we know that they get stretched pretty thin sometimes. And I think that helping this out and like kind of using our resources wisely to make sure that they can continue to do the work that they do ultimately serves us all pretty well. So that's kind of why my staff report was a little bit disjointed into those kind of 4 topics. But do you guys have any questions about any of this?
Well, just as a reminder, so this was in the budget last year for one position. Unfortunately, it's a match. So we didn't get anything. Hopefully we'll be able to get 2, but there's certainly no guarantee we may not get any. But I think it is a lot of bang for the buck. These are folks that, more than likely would pay for their own salaries many times over, because unfortunately, we only have so much bandwidth. And as Jonathan was pointing out, some of our folks, we'll just take Sadie, for example, with the Downtown Marketing Alliance. You just get burned out and you can only volunteer so much. So this would be some folks I think who would definitely bring some talent to bear and give us a lot more bandwidth. And just one more grant, for example, that we could open up, they end up paying for these salaries just by itself. But this is like $10, $12 an hour kind of average help. But they need the experience. So, and who knows? Jonathan was one of the best and brightest. Maybe they end up, staying. Council, what do you think?
Are we just looking for a budget item or?
I think we like approval to apply for both programs. I think we have to generate a plan for the AmeriCorps Vista. And then the other question, I think, is the coordination with the Chamber of Commerce in 2 ways. So one, are we comfortable sharing this Vista person so that they would be working closely and coordinating activities with the Chamber of Commerce? And 2, would council be willing to budget funds for the Chamber of Commerce for 2023 to see how to help augment their capacity, like in the amount of maybe $10,000?
Well, I think the way you're talking about using this person, we get every bit of that money back in sales tax revenue from programs. That what happens is we have so much going on and we're spread so thin. If you don't delegate or have more people involved, everything gets done at a less capacity.
Well, and sometimes you may even miss out on a grant or 5 because you're so busy trying to make a deadline for 1 or 2 at the same time, you can't go after them all.
Yeah. So I know in Jonathan's case, he gets a lot of stuff put on his plate.
Yeah.
And he does a great job, but there's only so many hours in a day. And I know that he basically volunteers a lot of his time now. So thank you, Jonathan, for all that you do.
So John, basically, what's the money that we're gonna need to come up with if we get the grants?
The grants for the interns,
Yeah, for both.
the best and brightest is a $40,000 commitment, but it's spread over 3 years. So the
Okay.
first year is $10,000, and then it's is it 20 and then 10 again, or
The second year is 10.
10, 10, 20?
First year is 10, second year is 20, and the third year is 10.
Right, okay.
And we already have that in the budget from what Chuck said. We didn't get it last year, so but it was.
We are
it was-
proposing.
You
it for
allocated it
23.
already, yeah,
Yes, the
okay.
10,000, for 23.
But that's, we're talking 3 years for a grand total of.
Oh, I just,
Oh,
we haven't
I know.
agreed on the budget yet, so I'm like.
I'm just saying, so you divide that out, at like $13,000 a year for a couple thousand hours worth of work, like $6.50 an hour.
I
It's
can
a lot of
only
bang.
imagine what we get back for that. It's
No,
gotta
I mean,
be-
that's a lot of bang for the buck, you know. And then, I'm sorry, that was half of Kate's question.
Right.
Because,
Well, it's only because we haven't, I mean, I don't know how every department feels about the way the budget looks. So, I mean, that being said, this is a great idea. Obviously, it's worked out for us with Jonathan. So, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, as they say.
The cost of a Vista is about $15,500, and that's broken into a living stipend of $12,500 and an admin fee of $3,000. They also ask that you give, actually specifically ask for a $4,000 housing stipend. So if you do that, you're talking, that's where you get to the 19.5. The best and brightest, I really think that just from personal experience, things get tight when you're, I mean, and it's something that a lot of our residents face. So I don't want to put this person onto a pedestal because I think there's a lot of people facing the same issues. But I think that if we were able to consider whether a housing subsidy might make sense, that might be worth doing. But typically it's the 40 for the best and brightest and the 19.5 for the Vista. The Vista is a 1-year program, but the kind of interesting part is we have to have a 3-year plan for whatever the work they're doing. So.
And,
It helps educate, new town ministers for the future.
Yeah.
and how would we determine what they'd be working on? That'll be Andy and you working together to delegate what they're doing.
Yeah.
And supervising them, right?
There may be, the AmeriCorps Vistas are really economic development people, so they'll be educated in that specific way. The best and brightest program is a little bit different, and we may end up with like a situation where we have a superstar in one area and maybe they're not as good at other things. And so sometimes it's good. And a lot of times what they suggest is you start with a basic, this is how we work at admin, and maybe they could go to PD and public works for a day or whatever, a little while, just to get an overall operations of the city. And then typically that second year, they focus on a more specific task, but they can still be doing day-to-day operations and be working on project management and that kind of stuff. What I did is I ended up working with Alan pretty extensively for the first year on projects that were ongoing at that time. And then that's when we started working on HRC and the train and things like that and signage. And so I think that overall we can do it either way, but they'll be prepared. I think the applicants we've seen have all been, I think last year we ended up with some international applicants who had, I want to say decades of experience in international development and things like that, that were very impressive.
yeah. So would council be all right pursuing the two, crossing our fingers, hoping that we get at least one or two? All right. Any further questions on that? Then I would request to go to the draft proposed 2023 budget.
John and Nate, come up at the end of the table here, please, sir. Okay, this is the continued discussion of the proposed 2023 budget. And this is the highlights I'd like to go over with you first. And we've got the department heads here to be able to answer any questions. And this is still a work in progress, but what you have before you this evening is the first complete version of the proposed budget. So it's not just looking at the individual departments, but the whole picture. And the first thing I might say that really affects all departments is the cost of living, that everybody is acutely aware of inflation. And we were looking at a pretty substantial cost of living to help cover what the consumer price index is in this metro area. It's been as high as 8.2, 8.3%. And currently, when I last looked, as I was preparing this report last week, it is down a little bit to 7.7% over the past year, September to September. So I would suggest that we consider an 8% wage and salary increase for all employees to just try to keep up with the cost of living. Last year, council approved a 5% raise for the employees when the CPI was 4.5%. And that seemed a little higher than back then, but now nothing like it is today. So Wanted to mention that, the next bullet item, no change there from the report you had the last time we talked about the budget a few meetings ago. And we're fortunate that health insurance premiums aren't rising too fast. It's 4.5%, so it's not double digit. And we're also going to get a 500 per employee dividend from our provider, our employee benefits provider, CEBT, in the new year, which will certainly help. So no questions with that. I'd like to move to police. And again, most of these items you've already seen. We modified a few things, changed a few things here and there, but most of these are what you've already seen. But I wanted to make sure we had another opportunity to talk with you about this. We'll probably have one more opportunity for sure, but just update you a little bit. Any questions on police or anything, Chief, that you'd like to add to the highlights for police?
No, I'd like to reiterate that it looks like currently the way that it stands, it looks like the police budget's increasing an overall 2.2%, which is really pretty modest. One of the things that I did notice, Andy, this afternoon, I think we do need to look, it's a small amount, but on 10/30/53/30, the communications equipment, I had originally asked, I think, for 4,000, the reason being that I think we're gonna need those dollars if there is a transition away from the current dispatch center. I don't want to be caught off guard because we would need those funds like in October, November.
Yeah, those would be one time.
The one time, yeah, for programming.
Right.
So that would be the only little adjustment that I would recommend.
What would be that new
4,000 instead of 1,000?
Okay.
Just to have those dollars available if need be. Outside of that, everything else we've discussed prior work session. So if anyone has any questions.
Well, I know we'll dig into this a little deeper, especially after we talk with Sheriff Alberts, but so, and it isn't that uncommon in smaller cities, but the police budget's about 40% of the city's overall budget. The outstanding thing is 20% of the police budget is dispatch going to $299,000 in change.
Right.
So that 40% I just mentioned, if we went with Jeffcom, could end up being more like closer to 30%, because you're talking about after the initial startup cost,
Correct.
about a $200,000 savings.
Right.
And anyway, so.
Are you proposing that we spend some of that same budget on other things for the police?
Well, and I am saying, like Chief's pointing out, we'd be better off, I think, at least to have some things in next year's budget just to set us up if we do make the transition, because we do have a year here where we have to give the county, should we decide that we're going to go with Jeffcom, we have to let them know, here by January 1st. And there would be like radios being retuned and some other things that, we would have to incur if we went that route. So I think it'd be better to have it in the budget and not need it than, be surprised, if we make a change to say some no.
Right. And just as a side note, remind me, Andy, I know that the sheriff is scheduled to come to a work session. I think it's November 7th. Yeah, it's November 7th.
Okay.
So that still was scheduled. Obviously, there was some things that happened with their agency and they lost the undersheriff. So they've been really busy.
Yeah.
And but he is going to come talk to council. So.
Okay. Moving on to administration. John, anything you want to highlight there? Anything in particular that we haven't discussed before?
The website updates that I anticipated at $10,000, those are going to have to be probably related to ADA access updates instead of overall user experience, just because we're required to do that by 2024. So that'll be a slight change from what I had originally intended.
Along the lines of what John was speaking about in his last report, right before this, we did plug in a proposed $10,000 contribution to Chamber of Commerce, if that's something council would like to do. But that's in there as a placeholder. That's council's desire. Parking Enterprise Fund is still a work in progress. That's a new fund that was created this year by City Council to make it a true enterprise fund for parking. And all the parking revenues go into that. So we will be speaking with council as a separate agenda item on the 7th, November 7th, about where we are with the parking facility project and the mobility hub and the financing for that. So we'll be getting this Parking Enterprise Fund budget might modify a little bit based upon those discussions at that meeting. So. Public Works.
What page, yeah,
Well, I was just going through the highlights right at the moment, John. The first couple pages there. So we're on the second page, Public Works, and we can certainly go into the overall, the rest of the budget if you'd like, but these are just the highlights. John, anything you want to add or modify there?
Just a couple of things I did inquire again today about the pickup I ordered this year that will not be here this year. It's still on order. They haven't canceled the order, but it.
I'm sorry, you ordered it in January? Is that right?
January 24th, when council approved the request for action. So I would like to budget that again for next year. Currently, it's 58,000. They tell me that there shouldn't be any price increases, but they tell you a lot of things shouldn't be, but unfortunately. So I'd like to put that in next year's budget. And then also I did just receive, we've been talking about the programmable logic controllers for the water treatment plant, that they're old and they do need to be replaced before we start having issues with them. The cost is $116,830. We can do a 2-year lease, and then the city would own those, and it would be approximately $7,000 a month lease for 2 years, and then we would own those logic controllers. They will be under warranty for at least the lease period. That was really only the two changes that I had in there.
So John, there are two options there, either buying it outright or
Buy it
doing the
outright,
lease.
or we can lease it for
Okay.
24 months.
Do you have any preference or thoughts on that? Which way to go?
I mean, if we buy them outright, then I don't know, we still have the lease, the warranty on them.
Mhm.
But if council desires not to spend that money upfront, we could lease them for that period of time.
So John, you said it's 7,000 a month?
Yeah, approximately 7,000.
Okay, so it's 84,000 a year, 2 years, 168,000 on a lease.
Correct.
How much run?
116.
116,830.
So it's paid for them in less than 2 years. John, if you hang out here long enough, you might get a driver.
I know.
You think so?
Crazy.
Other than that, that was really the only additions I had to Public Works.
And then all departments, the sales tax improvement fund really funds items in all departments. So that's why it's listed in this way. I think if there are any changes in here. Staff, anybody have anything you want to say on these items? in addition to what's already been said. We are replacing 3 patrol vehicles next year, but of course, one of those was approved in the budget this year, but is not going to be available this year. So we're going with adding that to next year, or the 2 that we're going to replace next year.
So I have something on the rate increase, and I think we should always try to do an inflationary measurement to increase our employees. I think there's still a jury to be out on where that inflation is gonna land. So I don't, that's a hard thing to figure out. If they're raising rates to try to tame inflation, and then inflation gets back down to 4.5%. I mean, I don't know where, how do we figure that out? I mean, what's your suggestion, Chuck?
Well, I know the feds, if you look at throughout history, they've overdone it.
Yeah,
They have a much higher rate of ratcheting things up too fast. And so history would tell us that the feds may do another rate hike, but then do an about face maybe next year. But you know, there's no guarantee, because I'm just gonna date myself and say, I was building houses when this nation hit the all-time high on a 30-year mortgage, which was 18 3/8. Wow. I didn't realize how lucky I was, you know, being a teenager building houses, that I was even working in that profession, because for much of the country, 18 3/8 meant building was, and I'm only illustrating that it is a difficult thing to measure, because we may sit here and say 8%, and it may be 12. You know, we could cut these folks short. However, I think we absolutely have reasonable intentions and reasonable employees, and if it were 8% and it ends up coming in at 5.5%, then maybe next year it's only, you know, 2%, or, you know, I mean, just to be fair.
to adjust that.
But it sure looks like we're gonna be around the 8% mark unless something dramatic changes.
Well, when inflation goes up and there's the sales in this town are inflated by 8%, the sales tax also follows that. And we bring in more revenue.
You're right,
You're trying to figure out what that income is gonna be also.
and
And it's just like a moving target, right?
well, and Scott also, and I'm not getting political because both parties do this, they rely on hedonic adjustments. And hedonic adjustments is the idea that if beef prices are way high, people will buy more chicken. The problem with that is now you're in an environment where we have high chicken, high beef, high pork, right? So the hedonic adjustments was that each party does not like to admit inflation's happening on their watch. So I'm saying that if anything, these inflationary prices are somewhat subdued. Just that's the nature of the beast. Because hedonic adjustments are a joke. They don't work. But the Feds will not admit this on a Republican or a Democrat watch.
That's all I had. Unless there are any other questions, again, we'll be talking more specifically about the parking facility project and the mobility on the 7th, and then get a final version of the budget.
And Andy, remind me again, and we'll have the final version of the budget here in a few weeks.
Yes. And then adoption, that first regular meeting in December.
All right, sounds real good. Any further questions before we move on to the last item? I have got the Columbine Garden Club requesting that they, we have no objection to them putting in for a grant.
There's a couple of items. They had talked to some folks around the city a while back about applying for this grant through the Colorado Garden Show. And they're asking for a $15,000 grant to improve the flowers and landscaping at Ruth Macy Mill Park, which is on the west end of town in Colorado.
I'm glad you said that because I thought they were applying for a $25,000.
I believe they're asking for 15, but that may be correct.
Oh, okay.
So what they would like to do is basically redo the landscaping over there. They had dirt that has now seen the end of its good life. It's just not good dirt anymore. They talked about potentially putting in artificial turf or mulch or something like that instead of what's there now in their area that they manage, which is just the little gardens part. They also would like to talk about putting in a picnic table like we have gotten for the Minor Street Marketplace, like a heavy duty industrial picnic table. They'd like to put in a bike rack, which we recently purchased for the city. We bought the ones that look like I don't know what that would be. And then, yeah, exactly. And then a bench. Those items, they'd like to just install that furniture in their little park area. The bench, they'd really like to put in a bus shelter as well. That could be used for the roundabout. As you know, they pick up right there on the north east corner of the park. And so they would like to explore whether or not that's a feasible thing to do, but they'd at least like to put a bench there. They need to apply for this grant by November 1st. That's why we rushed it in here. I wanted to make sure that city council is aware of this just because it's another organization talking about making improvements to city property. And then they would really like just to be able to say that they've got the support of the city in this grant application.
Anyone have any objections?
No objections, but is this a GoCo?
No, it's through a private organization, Colorado Garden Club.
They're
So they
gonna
do-
give us some money?
In theory,
Them,
Huh?
give them, right?
yeah, give them the money.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
can we turn this into GoCo?
We
It's a park.
could, they won't fund it. I don't think it's well aligned with their strategic goals right now. And we have another application going in on Thursday for the ball fields park. So I think that this money is enough to do what they're asking for. They did ask if the city be willing to put in match of like $1,000 or something like that to the, which we do that for other organizations. Future improvements to Ruth Macy Mill Park though could be a GoCo grant. They have a program called Community Impact, which does playgrounds and improved access to the outdoors. I think the scale of this one is relatively small. That's usually like a $750,000 program. And they don't really have this like small scale program. So I think for what they're looking for, I think those benches are about $1,500 or so. And the bike racks about the same.
Were about $1,500.
Yeah,
This table,
tables were about $800.
I don't see, I mean, this is good. They do a lot of great things, so I have no problem with that.
All right, Scott,
great.
Jimmy?
Absolutely.
You have money in the budget? Do we have money in the budget for this?
Well, nothing's coming out of our.
This is not.
No,
this is
They
not-
did ask,
They asked for the match.
They asked for
that we-
$1,000.
yeah, like something to match
Yeah.
the grant request. I was thinking $1,000, some, or maybe even $500, similar to what we've done for other communities that ask for funding.
Sure.
But even that, if we don't, I don't think it's a deal breaker for them.
They hadn't given you a specific number, right, John?
No, they
Right.
just,
For the match?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something we can bring back to council.
come
They
back.
may be looking for a small match.
In the
Well, it's also,
meantime,
it looks like we're in kind with them, and that's
Right.
really what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Like, council did this, therefore they're behind us.
all right, anything further? I would suggest we adjourn and reconvene with the regular meeting here at 7 o'clock. And it's 6:50, so we'll take about 10 minutes. Yeah. I don't know how that.
once you start using that touchscreen, it's hard to go back.
I know. I was trying to use a mouse earlier. It's like-
It's so much. I don't like it.
We have one board
Now,
full now.
If there's a touchscreen, you know, well, they're like. You know,
Every time.
That's right.
Someone who's there in the council.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, there's like the last one.
Yeah, they're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
That's a
done.
good one to have, I think, the last one. Yeah.
But there's no lot of that. Are you
What I'm always like.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was like that.
that's around here ever.
I know.
You know, my wife said.
I went over to the Bill Museum, yeah, and talked to them. They're like.
Sorry.
And it's the big day now. We saw them. They got together like next to it. Six. Some girl, it's an old car.
Oh, yeah.
One light on top, black and white.
Oh, wow.
So you should pop in sometime. I will. I'll show you around.
Hey, pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a heck of a state fair. I mean, your feet are killing you at the end of the day. Well, so we flew into Houston, then we drove over to Dallas to go to Studio.
Well, it's a drive.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes. But it easily is, I'm sure the top 4 or 5 in the whole country. It's just massive. And, yeah, very, very unique. I would recommend anybody. If you're gonna go to like a giant state fair, that's a good one. Oh, it's unbelievable. But you can literally like smell it in the air. Absolutely. You know, it's a no tax.
I didn't even know my permit had gone awry.
And,
But I found
they
it
are
now.
very,
So why-
pro-business.
It makes more sense that you have a, like, maybe a renter.
Yeah, my daughter and her husband, they absolutely.
No, yeah, no,
Yeah, northeast area.
And she's really good too, with like, show me what your ideas are for trying to fix it.
They live in the. They're really nice. Very, very, very much. In fact, when they first looked at it, it was only a couple. Standing in front of the house. Now, I'm setting up.
But you have to have it.
Yeah, I think we're gonna fix that.
Nice job. I know to ask you for something, so. Hey, how you doing?
Thank you, John, for your folder.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You guys are good.
Okay, email me.
Good.
Katie's well.
Thank you.
Short.
No.
Her legs up on the bed.
Well, it's 7 PM and I'd like to welcome everybody to the October 24th, 2022 regular meeting for the city of Idaho Springs. Big shout out to everybody in the audience. Good to see you. And I'd like to ask for roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Here.
John Curtis.
Here.
Jim Clark.
Here.
Scott Pennell.
Here.
Art Cacavelli. Kate Collier. Here. Thank you.
Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We have an agenda before us. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve agenda for October 24th, 2022.
Thank you, John. Do I have a second?
A second.
First and a second, all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, does anyone tonight feel they have a conflict of interest? Hearing none, I would like to move to the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes from October 10th, 2022.
Thank you, Kate. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Scott. Any discussion? Then all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, and next up is approval of the bills. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the bills to October 24th, 2022.
Thank you, John. And a second?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion of the bills? Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Here.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli. Kate Collier.
Yes.
All right, and thank you. Do I have any public comment?
No, Mayor, no one has signed up. Not for unscheduled.
Okay, we do have two scheduled. And first up, Donna Klein, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Let me bring my computer because I can't remember anything anymore.
Can you please just state your name and address for me for the record?
Personal address or who I'm representing?
Representing.
Okay. Donna Klein, I'm president of the board of project support at 1402 Minor Street.
Thank you.
And I believe you received my packet with my letter asking for some help with this. We have applied for, with the State Historical Fund, a preservation grant to remove the paint and to rebuild the veranda. That's what it's called in 1880 is the veranda. Much to my surprise, when I got the bids in, by the way, the guy who's going to remove the paint from the brick is the one who's doing hose house number 2. And AJ, who's doing the Hanson Lodge, has put in a bid to rebuild the veranda. Both are quite familiar with restoration projects and how they have to be done in a specific manner. AJ is from Boston and he's done a great deal of preservation in Boston. He's going to personally turn the posts, whatever they're called, in the balustrade. It's not a banister. It's a balustrade. I've learned so many new words. Because there's 88 of them and you can't find 88. So he'll just personally turn them and they will look like the ones in the picture on the last page of my proposal. it comes to $317,324. And as a 501c3, we have to come up with 25% match for that amount, which is $79,331, of which we have about 28,000 right now. In 2021, these very nice people walked into project support and we walked them around the building and we told them what we do and everything like that. And they sat down on that little couch out front, talked amongst themselves, and then handed us a $25,000 check. So we immediately put that into our account for our 30-year preservation fund. So we have that 25, we've raised some other money through our spaghetti dinners. If you haven't come, please come in November. You missed October's. $5 a plate. It's a slow way to raise money, and I have to have money by the end of January, maybe the 1st of February. Won't know if we get the grant until December 1st, when they send me an email that either says yay or nay. So I'm hoping to get into your 2023 budget, since I don't really have to have it this year. I would like you to help us achieve this goal. We are a 134-year-old building, but more importantly, we are the only facility in the county that houses what we have and does what we do. We partner with VOA, who does hot lunches for the senior community. For the whole county, it's not just people in Idaho Springs or like that, but people from Southeast can drive in and come have a great lunch. We have a good cook, you know that.
Yes.
And they do the Meals on Wheels program, of which they have generally between 40 and 50 people that they do lunches for, and a couple of drivers that deliver them every single day, Monday through Friday, plus 2 meals for Saturday and Sunday. They also do transportation to doctor's appointments, the post office, Safeway, King Soopers, and Evergreen, some recreational trips, that kind of thing. And we have a thrift shop in the basement and 14 low-income apartments. Our apartment rents are based on the HUD formula of 30% of your gross monthly income. Our rents range from $345 a month to $680 is the top. There's no way that that can meet all of our bills. And so thus the thrift shop, which is only open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you know anybody who wants to volunteer, we're more than happy to take them so that we can be open more days. We're also looking for a thrift shop manager because I want to do this the rest of my life. It's a fun job, but I'm just supposed to be retired and doing the project support part. So I would appreciate anything that council can come up with to help us achieve our goal. We did a test. Ryan came up yesterday, or no, last Thursday. We did a test, came up and put 3 different products on the brick to see which is going to take the paint off the best. There was a really kind of caulky looking one that was a little bit more goopy and one that was really goopy. And then you cover them and you keep them on there a minimum of 24 hours. He took them off today, so that's like 4 days, I think, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And product number 1 won. So.
Well, Donna, we normally don't have a back and forth in public comment. This is we just listen, and I don't want you to take the fact that council isn't having a back and forth with you. That
no, I just want you to put me in your budget for next year.
Well, thank you. No. We will take this up in a future work session for council to decide, but we certainly do understand you are the only group in our community that does what you do.
Right, and there's nowhere else that we can do everything we do. Even if you part it out, there's no 14 apartments in the county. There's nowhere else to house BOA or all that they do. And if we had a thrift shop somewhere else, we'd have to pay rent and we wouldn't have as much money to put toward this, the rest of the effort. So I just appreciate you listening. I have approached other places, all the town councils.
I did read the others that you approached, and I thought that was very appropriate.
And if you do have some others that I could approach, I'd appreciate knowing those because I'm happy to write the letters and ask.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Might I suggest El Pomar?
I did it.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right. Good job. Thank you.
However, El Pomar tells you in the very beginning, we do not want our name out there.
Okay.
So don't tell anybody.
All right. All right. Well, thank you very much. And Amy, please come on up.
Please state your name and address for the record. Yeah, Amy Miley, 2825 Riverside Drive.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm here following up with a meeting that I had earlier this month with John and Chuck and Jared, and Andy was there too. My little dog Toto. We were talking about bringing on an intern to help assist with some of the ISMA chamber functions. We kind of brainstormed bringing on maybe the best and the brightest or someone from AmeriCorps. This Minor Street activation has really gotten very big, very detailed, and it's all encompassing for ISMA, and it's becoming very all encompassing for the chamber as well. So we're just looking for some wiggle room in the budget to have the intern possibly work with us on the Minor Street activation, the calendar for new activations on minors, bringing a farmer's market, bringing some street vendors, some street artists. We'd like the intern to help us with cornhole, music scheduling and advertising, special events and CODA event support, social media advertising, that goes along with updates to the chamber and the ISMA website. Organizing the flowers and the holiday decorations on Minor Street. And this intern would ideally attend all of the ISMA chamber meetings, help distribute flyers and communication regarding the events, and help create marketing calendars and quarterly initiatives, and assist with membership drives. So I'm sure that you have all been made aware that the chamber and the ISMA did merge earlier this year. We are working together actively under the umbrella of the chamber, and we just are needing a little bit of help. So we're hoping to get into the budget.
Amy, normally we don't have back and forth, but just because you would never have thought to have been here for the work session, we actually were discussing having someone to assist in just such a manner.
Perfect. Awesome. I guess my job here is done.
Well, you know, everyone in public comment gets 3 minutes and they can talk about whatever they wanted, but it was good to get your perspective. And it was also gratifying to hear that you were wanting to cover many of the same concerns that we had and that Jonathan had expressed.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the finance officer. I'm not sure. Oh, hey, Lorraine, how are you?
Hello, Mayor Harmon and council members. How's everyone tonight? Thanks for allowing me to appear by Zoom. Are you hearing me all right?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay, good. Well, I know you have in your packets the September financial statements, so I will kind of walk through those with you and take any questions after that. it always starts out on the page 1 of the report with the combined cash and investments for the whole city. And you have 10 million at the end of September, 10,436,000. And it's allocated to the various funds based on who brought in how much money and how much they've spent. The allocation to the general fund is 1,989,000. So we go to page 2, which is the general fund balance sheet. That's the first amount that appears on that page. And the other item that's highlighted on that page is the fund balance that the fund started the year with, and that's 2,011,000. The next figure below that that's not highlighted is what the revenue over expenditures have been so far during 2022, and that's 239,000. So the general fund is looking good in this September report. Page 3 begins the revenues that have come in, and you have 2 years of actual plus what came in during September and what the year-to-date actual is through September compared to budget, and then the percentage of the budget that has been received already. And the top 10 revenues are highlighted here for you. September is, of course, 3/4 of the way through the year. So most of these you're seeing coming in about as expected. A couple of them are low, the building use tax based on what's been built versus what was budgeted. But overall, when you go through the revenues, they're coming in more or less as planned. And your revenues total on page 4 is 76.7% received through the year, as opposed to what was budgeted. It's pretty much on target. Your expenditures for the general fund departments start after that, and most of them are either right around 75% or lower. So if you scan through those, you'll see that expenditures spending is on track or a little under what was forecast. So there's no expenditure problems there in the general fund. When you get to page 12, it shows the total expenditures for the general fund through September to be 2,486,000, and that's about 68% of what was budgeted. So again, it's coming in under the budget for this point in the year. The bottom figure in the year-to-date actual line is that 239,000 that we saw on page 2 on the balance sheet of revenues over expenditures or increases in fund balances so far this year. Right next to that is the budget of what was expected to happen by this point in the year, throughout the year, of having a drawdown of the general fund balance in 2022. But so far we've got a healthy improvement over the fund balance. And so probably don't expect to see a drawdown of 95,000 in the year, which will help the bottom line, of course. Some of the reasons is certain things weren't done, or projects weren't moving along as fast as might have been when the budget was put together. So those expenses will eventually probably be incurred, but not during 2022. I'll skip the trust fund because that's other people's money that the city's in charge of, and go to the rent fund on page 15. And there's your fund balance there, beginning the year at 722,000. Intentional drawdown of those funds that came from the state to be used for Colorado Boulevard. So far this year, they've been drawn down by about $18,000. The only revenue on page 16 is the interest on those funds that comes in. No new money goes into this fund. And the expenditures are below expenses just because there was a budget there of a round number of $150,000 if needed that hasn't been utilized so far this year. Page 18 is the improvement fund, and I highlighted here the advances that are due to this fund from the water fund and the wastewater, from the water fund, I guess. You see 3 of those there, advance due from wastewater fund, wastewater fund, wastewater fund, and they equal over 2 million. I know you looked at the proposed budget earlier this evening, and Andy probably mentioned that we're looking to see if some of these can be paid back yet during 2022, smaller ones, and then possibly the $380,000 amount, but definitely to put the $2 million amount on a payment plan starting in 2022 and continuing until that's completely paid off. This fund, I'll tarry here on page 18 a little longer, does have a fund balance of $5,197,000 starting the year. But the reason those three items are highlighted above is because, yes, those are assets that form a lot of that fund balance, but it's not cash. It's money that another fund owes this fund. And as you all know, you can't spend money that somebody else owes you. So being able to use these monies in the fund to perform needed projects or purchase needed equipment can't happen until that money is paid back for that half of the fund balance. Page 19 shows the sales taxes still coming in strong, along with building use taxes. Parking revenue no longer is going into this fund. We'll see it later at the end of this little report in its own enterprise fund. And on page 20 are the expenditures for the year. Again, quite a bit under the budget, largely because of the big $1.25 million budget that's there in the Public Works facility budget, ends in 7044, the account number, that hasn't advanced as quickly as it was probable to have expected when the budget was put together over a year ago. Or hopeful, maybe not probable. Also, much of these capital city hall improvements and sites and facilities improvements have not occurred as had been anticipated with this budget. Money stays in the fund balance till a future year when they're done. Conservation Trust Fund, there's a lot of monies. They've got about 81,000 there. You get them quarterly, so you actually got a little more than budgeted at this point in the year. 85% of the budget has received after 3 payments out of 4. But nothing was budgeted here to let this fund balance build up so that future park or recreation building type projects can be handled from this fund. Page 24 is the 1% street sales tax fund. It had beginning fund balance in 2022 of $1.7 million. And you see sales taxes continue to go into this fund, that they must go into this fund to pay for future street improvements. And on page 26 are the line items there, which again are a little under what had been anticipated. Part of the reason they're under, though, is the last 2 line items there, the notes payable. The bonds that were issued to get the starting money for this fund improvements and other activities are paid twice a year. The first payment is interest only, and the second one is interest and principal. So the full principal amount and the half of the interest will be paid before the year's over. Then we get to the enterprise funds. Here's the water fund, and again are highlighted 3 smaller amounts that are due to the general fund, and they amount to about $64,000. And again, we're recommending that they be repaid in this year, 2022, and just get them off the books. The total fund equity in the water fund is $5.8 million, but looking up at the top, you see that again, you can't spend a lot of that equity because it's in the ground, but the cash and receivables are about 1.7 million. The next page shows the revenues, which are from user fees, as you would expect in an enterprise fund. Its customers pay for the cost of the services and the goods, so to speak, the water that's sold. And then the expenditures. Oh, and I meant to say on page 28 that the revenues are coming in as expected. About 75% of the revenues that were budgeted have already been received through September. On page 29 starts the expenditures, and they all are a little under what a 75% would be. Partly because in total, down on page 30 at the bottom, you'll see some projects again that haven't quite advanced as much as had been hoped when the budget was put together. Page 31 is all the debt that's going to be due from this fund. One of these bonds that just got paid loans, the Colorado Water and Power Authority 2002 loan, just had its final payment made this month. So that's really good. And there will never be any more payments on that loan. It's paid in full. Expenditures for this water fund are at about 38.8% for the year over compared to what was budgeted, and revenue over expenditures is $263,000. The wastewater fund has more yellow lines on its balance sheet for those notes that are due back to the general fund and to the sales tax improvement fund. And again, we're recommending that all those first small ones, about 5 lines of the report there, be paid off in 2022. And if possible, also the smallish one of $379,000 this year, but definitely to make payments on the big advance that came from the sales tax improvement fund this year and next year and every year after that until it's paid off. There is cash up above, as you can see in the first line of this statement, $1.4 million in this cash, and then there's some with the fiscal agent that is really the Colorado Water and Power Development Authority to continue using some of those loan proceeds for needed payments. And you've got receivables. So there's, about at least $1.5 million there that could be used for some of these payoffs. Page 34 shows the revenues, and they're at about 64% for the year. And during this particular period, you just had some smallish amounts come in. You bill every other month, so you don't always have the same amount coming in from month to month. The expenditures, similar to the other funds, are running a little bit lower than you would expect. And some of it's due to projects and some of it's due to debt service that hasn't been paid yet, that's not due yet. For instance, on page 37, there's year-to-date actuals on some of these and not others, and it looks like some were in different line items. So you didn't have a full budget here on some of this. You've paid half of the budget so far on your Colorado Water and Power Authority principal and interest. The rest we paid in November. Parking Enterprise Fund, page 38. 39 shows those revenues come rolling in. You've got about $242,000 through September this year. And no expenditures really forecast this year, but these amounts are needed to be accumulated for the massive parking structure project that is contemplated to begin next year. These pension fund will soon be closing out because of the last pensioner has passed. So it's just holding its own right now as expected for the year through that time. With that, I will happily answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Lorraine?
Nope, she's done a great job as usual.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. Good night, everyone.
All right, next up is ordinance first reading. And we kick it off with ordinance number 7. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I'm sorry.
It's a second reading there. Sorry.
Thank you. Second, let's try second reading. All right, that's always better. Saves time that way. Wow. Ordinance number 7, do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 7, series 2022, an ordinance amending section 2.3 of the Idaho Springs municipal municipal code to increase the compensation of the offices of city council and mayor for the new terms commencing in January 2024 and thereafter.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Scott. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli. Kate Collier.
Yes.
Moving to ordinance number 8. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 8, series 2022, an ordinance amending subsection 8-4A of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code to exempt from city sales tax the sale of certain hygiene products.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
John Curtis. Jim Clark.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli. Kate Collier.
Yes.
Next up is city attorney. Do we have her with us tonight?
No, sir.
Okay. Then we will go to city administrator. Looks like no request for action, Andy?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, assistant city administrator, Jonathan, anything further?
No, sir.
Okay. Deputy city clerk?
No request for action, Mayor.
I want to thank you for the update on businesses that was in our packet.
Sure.
All right, very good, thank you. Community development planner. Good, all right. Police department, chief, anything further?
No, no request for action.
Okay.
Just comments, though.
Yes,
You know, we had 2 significant incidents in the last week. On the 12th, we had officers respond to a motel and have to deal with an armed individual, and they did a fantastic job in talking to that person and being able to get that person in custody. So it was a job well done, and certainly folks are aware that we had a tragic accident at Safeway the other day, and that's what it looks like. It was just a tragedy, and so our hearts go out to both the family of the victim, who is an Idaho Springs resident, and that's been updated on our webpage. And also the other person involved. It was just an accident.
yeah, well, we really appreciate you sharing that tragedy, tragic news. Also, Chief, there was another incident at the library with Sergeant Sonberg, like punched in the face, I think, or.
Right, yeah, we were, I think Councilwoman Collier was present, someone that had some mental problems, so we talked to him for a bit, and we were able to get him to an ambulance and taken down to the hospital for some care, and Sergeant Sonnenberg was struck, but overall it was a good outcome. Yeah.
I was gonna make a comment on that, if you don't mind, Chuck. Yes, I was there with 3 other library staff. Our force and the sheriff department did an outstanding job. I mean, absolutely outstanding. We felt very protected, very safe, and very cared for as a community. So we want to thank Chief Nate was there as well, as well as I think about 5 of your officers, and I think a sheriff's deputy was there as well. But an outstanding job. Cool and collected the whole entire time.
I'm really glad that you made that comment.
Absolutely.
Very appropriate. Thank you. All right, Public Works, John Bardoni.
Mayor and Council, you have my staff report with no request for action.
All right. I will go down to our what I think is going to be our final thing tonight is the appointment of Jeremy Jones. Please come to the podium, and we're glad to have you.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly declare and affirm that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado, and the laws and ordinances of the city of Idaho Springs, and that I will faithfully, well and truly, and to the best of my skill and ability, perform the duties of council member
or the duties of council member,
for the city of Idaho Springs, upon which I'm about to enter.
the city of Idaho Springs, and which I'm upon, which I'm upon.
Oh, congratulations.
Jeremy, welcome and congratulations. And I'm going to apologize in advance. You're coming in like right in the middle of budget time. So,
I'm okay with it.
All right.
I gotta look at the budget day things, when they're putting it out, as you know, we're doing the same thing in other organizations, so. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. That's what I can say.
very good. I want to thank Ken Slaymaker for being here tonight too, who also would have been an outstanding council person, and thank him for all his work and continued work on planning.
You jumped in.
Mayor, would you like him to, well, today?
Jeremy,
I guess you're ready to sit up.
please
here.
join us. I actually have something official for you too. And thank you. That's good to
You'll even get a nameplate.
Yeah.
That's right.
It'll be in crayon.
Yeah, I'll talk on it. I was just gonna say that, yeah. But since we do not have our city attorney, we won't have an executive session.
We actually are still gonna have the executive
Oh,
session,
we are?
just with our other council, but not the city attorney.
Okay, all right, well, that's good to know. Then.
Thanks a lot, Andy.
Just kidding.
All right, so I will have to ask for the members of the audience